the time is right now for people to start learning about Ayurveda. We've been waiting for some time for this to happen, and people are fed up and they want to find a completely holistic way.
Hippocrates was influenced by the Ayurvedic writings, and he even discovered plastic surgery through it. He used to do plastic surgery on the nose, which is just amazing.
The Vata person would be taking you out to get you drunk. Your Kapha person would be there to give you the biggest hug and would be just the the reliable one that you could just very solid and reliable.
Welcome to The Wellness Way with me, Philly J. Lay, a layperson's guide to your natural health systems, your very own NHS.
Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. And today we're talking about the grandmother, the great-great-grandmother, the great-great-great-great-grandmother of medicine. It is Ayurveda. A lot of people don't know much about it, but I have managed to find for you today a wonderful woman, Viv Clifton. She is an Ayurvedic consultant and counsellor. She works on diet and lifestyle to support the physical, mental, emotional health, because it's the whole all-round body that's being looked at here. She's worked with adults and children over many, many years, although she doesn't look old enough, but she has. And she's been running teacher training courses in schools and as a meditation teacher. She's worked as a counsellor. She's a trained counsellor and nutritionist and lifestyle advisor on mental health issues. And we're going to talk a little bit about mental health in this podcast. Her passion and aim is to demystify Ayurveda and make it accessible for everyone, not those just lucky enough to travel to India, which I hope one day I will be lucky enough to do. But until then, Viv Clifton, so lovely to have you on The Wellness Way. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Philly. I'm delighted to be here.
Ayurveda.
When yoga came to this country, whenever that was in the 60s, when it became fashionable, so it came from the east to the west, Ayurveda should have come. Ayurveda they are the sister sciences. So Ayurveda is what you do on your mat. Ayurveda complements off your mat. And that's really how it should be. So the saying is, to try to do one without the other is like trying to stand on one leg. So we have yoga and we have Ayurveda. They complement each. They are together. So that's a part of a quite a big part. Some more often than not is yoga, teaching people how to bring yoga into their daily. That doesn't mean that they have to be doing an hour every day, but even just 5 minutes each day, building it up. So that's quite a strong part of it, really, is yoga. But so the elements that we speak about in Ayurveda, and some people are saying that there are 6 elements if we bring consciousness into it, but we typically speak about the 5 elements, and they are space and air, and then fire, water and earth. So they're the 5 elements, and the belief is that everything around us, everything in the universe is built on these foundations, those 5 elements. So everything we see around us, and ourselves included, we have those elements in us. And where the doshas come from is those are pairs of those elements. So the first 2 elements, which are space and air, form Vata dosha. And then we have fire and water, and they form Pitta dosha. And then we have water and earth, and they form Kapha dosha. And so those 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, you will hear mentioned all the time, more than the elements really. You will hear the doshas mentioned all of the time when you become familiar, and you will also recognize them in you. And I've never heard anyone actually explain it like this, but how I explain it to people, because it really is the case, they are just the names for qualities. They are just qualities as far as I'm concerned, because, so for instance, qualities of Vata dosha would be light, dry, rough. Qualities of Pitta would be hot and moist. Qualities of Kapha are cold, like Vata, but not light, very heavy and dense. They've obviously got lots of other qualities, but that's just to give you an example. So they're just the names, and we do recognize those qualities in us. Some of it is very, very obvious. Oh, I've got dry skin. Some of it is really obvious. And
I'm going to ask you to break this down a little bit more for those people that haven't heard of this, because it is such a fascinating subject. And so I'm going to take you straight back to Vata, space and air. So if you give us that information again, and then could you tell our audience what they should look for in themselves to signify that? So, when you're talking about dry skin, everybody knows if they've got dry skin, but if you could break down each one of the doshas kind of very, very as succinctly as you can for us, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
So I'll try, and you might need to kind of interrupt me to ask me to clarify. People think, well, what? So all of us have all three doshas in us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. So me and you have three doshas in us, but the ratios are different. So we are born with our mother nature, our prakriti, which is the ratio of those doshas, our true authentic self. And that's how we were born. And then through life, those doshas, because of life being life, the doshas increase. They adjust and change, taking us away from our authentic self. So my job always is to look at somebody's current state, how they are today, to help them return to how they were originally. So, and the state of you today is called your Vikriti. If somebody, so a person, so we'll have a predominant dosha. You could be mainly Vata and then Pitta and Kapha, or you could be quite strongly Vata and Pitta, a little bit of Kapha. So it's common to be predominantly one or two. And so what is important is knowing how you are today, with all the flaws, with all the imbalances, whatever. Those imbalances, I need to understand what the doshas are so that they can be reduced. So
okay, I'm going to stop you there and ask another question. And that is for those people that are skeptical about Ayurveda, how do you know what the true authentic self dosha is? How can you read that in a person? Because you can obviously read the current versions of what they are, what's going on in the body.
Yeah.
But, we have to take lifestyle, trauma, that's first 7 years of your life that have changed you substantially. Show me the child and I'll show you the man. So how can you work out what somebody should have been originally as their true authentic self when they are born?
Through pulse diagnosis, so you can feel it in the pulse, and through doing a whole big long assessment and consultation, which takes a long time, which would be all sorts of questions about the body and mind, taking into consideration how they've been most of their life. So if, for instance, they've been skinny most of their life, take that into consideration. But then you look at, how are you today? So I would ask the question, we look at how they are today, but how have you been through most of your life? Where have things changed? So does that answer your question? So someone can't just know. You can get dosha quizzes, you can get dosha tests that are quite a fun little thing to do, but they're about 20 questions. So they're not very, eye color, build, that kind of thing. They give you kind of a brief. They're quite fun and they can be quite useful. But the important thing, and I always say this to people, the important thing is what is aggravated today, because that's where we need to work. What is aggravated in you today?
So I know that when you see patients, you do a tongue analysis. And can you explain a little bit about the tongue analysis? Does that take you back to the authentic self? Is that a way of reading it?
That's more for me to see what that sort of the state of their health today. with any imbalances. So for instance, I'll be able to, we'll look at the obvious thing of like the coating on the tongue. What kind of colour is it? Is the tongue swollen? Is it got ridges down the edges? Has it got patches on it? And that will be a good indication of, not only, that isn't something that I would only use, it's just another little tool, the same as the pulse, another tool to help in the assessment. But it does give quite a, and I think there's other modalities that use the tongue diagnosis as well. I don't think it's only Ayurveda that uses tongue diagnosis, but it is quite a useful part. But I wouldn't look on, you wouldn't be able to see what somebody's authentic self was by looking at their tongue. Well, I wouldn't. Maybe an Ayurvedic maybe some doctors would, but it wouldn't be enough for me to use.
Okay, but it gives you a reading, a tool of where you are now. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to Vata, space and air. And so can you just break down what would be going on for somebody if they were predominantly Vata at this moment of time in their life?
Indication of aggravated or increased Vata disturbance would be an inability to relax, nervousness, problems sleeping, weight loss, cold, feeling cold all the time, getting digestive issues like bloating, constipation. They'd be indications of Vata. Loss, sort of like hair loss, bone density loss. So loss is less of, it's when there's a decrease in things like that could be an indication of Vata being aggravated. And it's very much dependent as well on the time of year. Will be aggravated. Doshas are aggravated at different times of the year, because the seasons are governed by the doshas as well. So yeah, dry skin, brittle hair, that would be that Vata dosha can be responsible for that, and many diseases.
Can you name some of those diseases?
There are types of cancer that are from Vata. Irritable bowel syndrome can be Vata dosha. Most illness is caused by Vata dosha.
Okay.
Vata dosha causes quite a lot of trouble. and it is changing as well. It's somebody who has got very high Vata. They might be quite erratic, changing a lot, scatty. They're typical, very fun, a lot of excitement. A Vata friend is great fun, very exciting. You never know where they'll do lots of fun stuff with you. Very high energy, but then depletes very quickly, gets exhausted very bit a whirlwind. Vata is a whirlwind, always a really good way of.
You've just described my daughter.
Have I? Really?
Yes, you have. I mean, spot on. This is just extraordinary. Right.
It's really, I love it as well, because people are like that. They'll be like, wow. And they'll be like, yeah, you've just described my daughter, or that's me, or people, because we can recognize those qualities, can't we?
Yeah.
It's good when we can kind of recognize them.
Yeah, no, that's extraordinary. Right. Let's move on to Pitta. Now,
Pitta is quite intense and hot and fiery. So
just run us through the elements again. That's fire, and
that's fire and water is Pitta dosha. So a Pitta predominant person might have quite fair complexion, but burn quite easily in the sun. Be quite rosy complexion, hot complexion. Often a very lovely radiant complexion. But when Pitta rises in that person, then they could be very flushed, very red. With that, quite a competitive, fiery nature. Fiery to look at, fiery in nature. And a Pitta, I do like kind of using the friend analogy, to be honest. A Pitta friend, they're organised.
If you are enjoying my work, please sign up to my webpage, phillyjlay.com, and you will receive my newsletters and an exclusive Walking into Your Future meditation. And if you buy my course, The Wellness Way Faster Class, Your Natural Wellness Journey, you will get 2 amazing free bonus gifts: my Wellness Awakening album and a video on how I make my herbal teas. And for the full, completely uncensored videos of my podcast, you can come and find me on my Rumble channel, where my guests still have freedom of speech. And join me on my Locals community channel, where I will be building my community and starting my weekly Zoom calls for the price of a cup of coffee a month.